Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. We have this panel discussion on future of fossil fuels. We have a very distinguished panel with us, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Vij. He's spent a whole lifetime with the ONGC. We have Mr. Naveen Munjal, who's Director Commercial of CLP India, one of the most successful and well-run private power enterprises on the generation side. Mr. K.A. Sinha, the former director of CIL. We are very happy to have him here. He's a veteran of the sector. Dr. Andrew Michener, he heads the Clean Coal Center in UK and has done very distinguished work in clean coal technologies. Mr. U. Kumar, Advisor Coal. He is again a very noted thinker in the coal sector and has done very creditable work. We also have Dr. Avinash Chandra with us. He has been the first Director General Hydrocarbons in India, and he has a very good overview of the basins and has worked abroad also and still advises abroad. So we have an ideal panel to kick off the discussions today on the future of fossil fuels. We began the first session virtually on the same note, and that was fossil fuels and where they will be and what they have to contribute in the future. I think we can't run away very soon from fossil fuels. They're there to stay. But there is no place for unclean fossil fuels, given the strong emphasis on environment and clean air, which people are increasingly recognizing as a fundamental right virtually. So there is need for cleaning up fossil fuels, and I think it would be worthwhile for governments, rather than shy away totally from fossil fuels, which will continue to dominate for a few decades, to see that funds are provided for cleaning up the fossil fuels and to ensure that the use is in a very clean way as far as possible. And the levies, the various levies that are being collected on fossil fuels, I sometimes call them the sin items, at least in the Indian context, maybe even globally. The three sin items: one is coal, the other is petroleum, and the third is alcohol. We say that all these three are highly avoidable items. But if you look at the revenues of governments, whether at the central level or at the state level, one shudders to think what will be the state of the finances of governments if these revenues were taken away. And people were really to shun the use of these three commodities. Be that as it may, even today's paper carries out something on one of the economic papers, an analysis that the government of India, having walked into GST regime, is still looking at putting a cess on coal. Cesses don't have to be shared with the states, unlike duties. And a classic example is the clean coal cess, or the clean environment cess, as we call it. And a review just before the presentation of the union budget, I think 2 days before, had shown that I think 67% of the clean coal cess was unutilized. And even from what was utilized, I think a substantial portion was not really used in cleaning up coal, which I think would be the first candidate for it, or, of course, promoting the other cleaner forms of energy. So I would begin by saying that we should strongly pitch that all these cesses which are collected in the name of these fuels should be used substantially to clean up these fuels, carry out the modifications wherever necessary to meet environmental norms, because if this fund is provided there, tariffs will not be hurt, otherwise retrofitting in some of the older plants could cost as much as 80 paise on tariffs. And already a lot of power generating companies are struggling to sign up PPAs. And with the renewable prices falling further, which is a good sign, the competition is getting tougher, and it's getting tougher to sign PPAs. So the long-term financial viability of these assets is in question. At the same time, we need to spend money on cleaning up the petroleum products for combustion. There again, the companies, the refiners need money for going into what we call Bharat Stage 6, which is like Euro 6. And all these expenditures have ultimately to be taken out of the consumer's pocket. What I'm merely saying is that there's no dearth of funds collected from these very commodities. You have to plow them back to make them cleaner. There's a lot of talk about electric mobility, and electric mobility may also become truly a reality if it hinges on electricity produced by fossil fuels. So that is something that we've got to look at and see that the power sector, which is going to provide electric mobility, is not affected. In fact, there's a major editorial today in one of the leading economic papers saying that India's increasing dependence on oil and gas imports needs to be curbed, because 80% of the crude or even more is imported, and we do not have very much crude in, when we talk of the Indian context, but of course globally we are here to give some recommendations. We should see that there's economic security, and economic security means that we've got to develop the internal resources till renewables reach a stage where they can take over without much pain to the producer and the consumer. The last point I'd like to make is that there's a huge employment attached to fossil fuels, right from mining, processing, and up to the consumption. Now, all that employment which is skilled or semi-skilled has to be kept in mind. If these sectors do not get short-circuited in electrical terms, it will be in the best interest of the economy and also for employment. With these words, I will now request Mr. Naveen Munjal, the Director Commercial, CLP India, to kindly make his remarks.